Hi, everybody, and welcome back. We are still here for Openly Disruptive's Disruptive Diner, Local Investment, Local Wealth. It is April 15th, 2014. We just heard from Jason Groh, who talked to us a lot about kind of what's the win-win when you look at it from, especially for venture or high-growth companies. You know, the companies that we traditionally think of as having venture backing, and you know, they're part of an accelerator or an incubator, and they have an exit that's maybe an IPO. So those kinds of companies. But that's not everything that an economy is based on, and that's not all of the ways that that growing companies are actually good for communities. And we happen to have here in St. Louis, a lot of people are familiar with ideas like microfinance, like Kiva, and other things around the world, but we actually have a great success story that we're going to hear about here in just a second. Galen Gondolfi is joining us now. Galen, in addition to working for Justine PETERSEN, where he does a lot of outreach to people on how to use community finance to actually grow business at a real grassroots level, at a very neighborhood-centric level, and some innovative ways to finance that. But Galen also comes from an arts background, and Galen has run an arts center.
Don't hold that against me, Dan.
No, it's good. And he didn't actually know that I was going to bring that up, but because I think you'll start seeing this thread that all of these big finance terms that maybe you heard from Jason, if that was a little bit alien to you, you're going to start talking about what does this mean to real people in real neighborhoods. And then we're going to close when Galen's done, and he's got time for questions for us. And then we're going to really look at why. Let's close again with why this matters and why we're kind of at a pivotal point in time with Eric. But first, we're going to start with Galen Gondolfi. And Galen, once again, doing Pechakucha style or Pachachka style presentation, 20 slides, 20 seconds each. His slides will be posted, although I think you'll notice in a moment that there's not a lot of notes to take, so just listen to him and follow along with the conversation. He's got his great story to tell about a success that's 30-something years old, right?
Justine PETERSEN is 18 years old.
I'm sorry, almost 20. Okay, I'm sorry. But anyway, that this is something that's going on, that this is not a new idea, and why it benefits us. So, are you ready, Galen?
I am. Thanks, Dan. Well, great. Hello, St. Louis. Hello, Madison, Wisconsin, Peoria, Illinois. So what am I doing here? Who am I? Why are you here? There's all these questions to answer. So I'm Galen Gondolfi. I'm Senior Loan Counselor and Chief Communications Officer with Justine PETERSEN. We're a local nonprofit asset development organization, which sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo. But what that's about is this idea of opportunity and access to capital. Our mission statement is access to capital, safe and affordable capital. Justine PETERSEN is a micro lender for the SBA, the Small Business Administration. In fact, we're the nation's second largest micro lender for the SBA. What is micro lending? Caps out at $50,000. We do anything from a few $100s up to $50,000. But we do other stuff. We're a community development financial institution, a CDFI, known as Great Rivers Community Capital. And it's all about connecting local institutions, banks, credit unions, private foundations, invest in our CDFI, and in turn, we lend those dollars to small business people. So in fact, today I'm going to talk a lot about the partnership between our nonprofit operation and our for-profit operation of our CDFI, part with local banks. In fact, the dollar sign, I couldn't find a cent sign. That was on a manual typewriter. Okay, so things have changed. You have to index their inflation now. We're all about big dollars. Moving on to numbers. Justine PETERSEN has done over 5,000 microloans, that is loans to small business people, anywhere from a few dollars up to $50,000. We started 12 years ago doing microlending. That year we only closed 10 of those loans. Last year we closed 700. Again, it's all about access to capital, safe and affordable capital, dollars that can't be accessed from a bank but potentially through our pass-through. So what do these percentages look like? I want to talk about interest rates. In fact, we compete head-to-head with what's called payday lending or title lending. Average interest rate of a payday loan in the state of Missouri last quarter was 453%. When I first heard that, I thought we should move the decimal point. We'd have to go back to my slide with the period and move the decimal point over. Even at 45.3%, it would be astronomical. So think about it. What does this mean, this whole at? This means about accessing dollars off the internet. Since 2009, American Banker did a survey. Since 2009, 63% of businesses have accessed dollars off an internet lending site, most of them at high, amazing rates that actually draw on a daily amortization. Less than. Okay, what's this all about? It's about the fact that we assist small businesses that essentially have blemished credentials, that have less assets, that can't actually access from a mainstream institution. So what does this mean? Dollars over $50,000 we can't help you with. We're about gap financing. We're about microloans. We work, though, in tandem, in conjunction with mainstream lending, and that is perhaps a bank can do X amount. We can come in at a gap and do some tandem lending or package lending, if you will. Now I want to talk about jargon. Dan said Jason was talking a lot about jargon, was throwing a lot of jargon. I'm going to throw some jargon out. We do financial capability, and people are like, well, what does that mean? Well, it used to be called financial literacy. But we put some teeth on financial literacy and actually wet it with products. And that is this idea of true products and services from financial institutions. So this idea that people become empowered, economically empowered. In fact, Justine Petersen was a social worker. She was MSW of the Year twice in the 80s, and she was all about partnering with mainstream financial institutions to build wealth, to build assets. Back in the day, her first partnership, I believe, locally was with Boatman's. So it's about more. It's about raising credit scores. In fact, today I could have pontificated all 20 slides about credit scores. If you're going to talk to me about local wealth and local investment, I want to talk about credit scores. And that it comes down to that. Banks are either going to lend to you if you have a high credit score, and if you don't, they potentially come to us. And Justine Petersen's somewhat of the Statue of Liberty of microfinance, and that is, bring to me your huddled masses. Bring to me your blemished credit scores. Bring to me your abysmal credentials. And I'm glad you're all sitting down because that's quite a radical statement. But that's our mission. In fact, and I'm going to go through a list here. We have a colon. In fact, if you have your 820 credit score, if you have your tangible collateral, if you have your DTI that is acceptable to a mainstream financial institution, you're going there. I ethically won't sit down with you. You're going to a bank. Justine Petersen is actually a port of entry to mainstream finance. I should have a bumper sticker on my car that says pro-banking. In fact, what I do for a living at Justine Petersen is create customers for banks. It's exactly what it is. And why do we say that? Because that equates to empowerment. That is, for one to be financially capable is to be empowered and essentially to be able to access capital from the mainstream finance, which means asterisk. That is, we don't help everybody. We can't help everybody. In fact, if you don't need help, you're going to a bank. But if you're in such a state that I can't lend you dollars for your business, perhaps we'll think about other ways to assist you. There's technical assistance. There's ways to help you in terms of small dollar loans. Microfinance and microenterprise aren't synonymous. Microenterprise is about lending to small businesses. Microfinance is this idea of small dollar loans even to consumers. Much of my life is about this. People come in this state of mind, don't know what to do. They've been denied by a bank. What I try to do is come up with a game plan for them to access capital that essentially equals this idea of empowerment, that graduates into mainstream finance. In fact, Justine Petersen's interested in losing customers every day, or clients, if you will, and graduating them to mainstream finance. It's all about this there's all this corporate bravado about the wow factor and such. Justine Petersen's about excitement and opportunity and making dreams a reality for small business people, as well as consumer loans and such. This idea that the future is looking bright and there's optimism. It's unabated, actually. It keeps going on and on. So as much as we graduate those to mainstream finance, more and more come through our doors. And so Justine Petersen's actually a part of the largest or fastest growing microfinance program in Kansas City at the moment. At this demand just seems to be unabated. So, there we go.
Thank you.
Time for questions. We went full circle here.
There we go. It's perfect. Okay. So, great talk. So can you talk a little bit about, I think it's sometimes hard for people to wrap their heads around, so $50,000, I mean, what can that do? But talk about what people can do with $50,000.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate you asking that, Dan, because, is that chump change? Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. Is it chump change? The amazing thing is this, is that there's a study done that purportedly there are $8,000 small business declinations in America daily. Can you imagine that? And of those, a great percentage are actually under $100,000 and potentially under $50,000, which constitute micro-lending. What it can do is provide opportunity to mainstream finance, and this is what I mean. You borrow from Justine PETERSEN. And I'm going to tell you this. Maybe the money you're borrowing isn't the largest benefit. Maybe the larger benefit is the fact that we'll report to credit bureaus, we'll raise that credential, graduate you to a bank, which allows two things: a much more competitive interest rate and access to larger dollars, larger than your $50,000. So Justine PETERSEN, even though we're a micro lender, the perspective is about graduating people to macro. In fact, we're not doing our job if, in fact, you keep coming back. I call them repeat offenders or serial borrowers. We don't want that. I've failed if I haven't raised your credentials to finally graduate to a bank, not only for lower interest rates, but larger amounts to borrow.
So if I have a vision, I want to start a food truck. Hey, this food truck thing is huge, although maybe that trend is passing. But and my truck is going to cost $50,000, and I've got no experience, I've got no customers, I've got no menu, I've got no marketing plan. But if for $50,000 I can get a truck, can I come to you and get my truck?
You will, and guess what? I'm going to take out my whittling knife and carve it down. I'm not lending you $50,000. You sound like, wait a minute, you have a lot of homework to do. In fact, what I'm going to convince you to do, and I personally been involved in about 25 of these loans, that is someone who wants to do a food truck, and we take a step back, and we talk about renting from either a commercial incubator or even a church kitchen for you to start catering. That's where I want you to start. All of us know the adage or cliche about somebody wants to open up a restaurant and they're a good cook, and there's a hell of a lot more to it than that. In fact, of cleaning the fry bins, and somebody needs to do custodial work and things of that nature. So we're actually about right-sizing your dreams, if you will. You can still dream macro, but I'm interested in starting at the very micro level in terms of lending dollars. I quickly want to talk about the fact that this is about job creation. You asked, where can $50,000 get you? I want to say this much. The Association for Enterprise Opportunity, which is a trade association of microfinance groups like Justine PETERSEN, released a study called 1 in 3, and it's this. If every 1 in 3 small businesses, and let's define small businesses as less than 5 employees, hired one full-time employee, not only would St. Louis, but the nation would be at full employment. So look, the gap between that small business hiring a full-time person, what's the gap? The gap is dollars. Where's the money going to come from? Hence, access to capital could potentially equate to full-time employment. So what I'm talking about today is actually jobs. Local wealth, local investments, about job creation.
Great. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah. Here we go, Eric.
Galen, you talked about competing with the title loan and paycheck cashing industry with interest rates of 435%.
53% last quarter.
Yeah. So quickly, how is that not part of usury laws, or are there any such things? And do you have any trend data on have people been using that more in the last 5 or 6 years, and how does that affect your?
I need more than 20 seconds to respond to this one. Okay, couple things.
First of all, does that mean that you're at like 420% interest, or is
Okay, Justine PETERSEN rates are higher than mainstream finance. At the moment, we're anywhere between 7.25% up to 13%. Okay, which means I direct you to a bank if I feel that you can access those dollars. For those who are falling prey to 453%, very much interested in the fact that, in fact, I do need to say this much. Last week, we closed a loan for an 82-year-old man on his birthday who's had 6 payday loans recycled for the last 10 years, which means we cut his monthly payment, some of those were weekly payments, to 1/7 of what he had to pay originally, which is going to transform his life. But back to your question, it's state by state in terms of what we look at on the regulatory environment for payday lending. I need to be careful what I say about the state of Missouri. They have an incredibly strong lobby effort, the payday loan industry. A former legislator owned a payday lending center operation. He came public and said, I got rid of it. He sold it to his third cousin. So that's how they do business. If we go across the river in Illinois, it's capped, but fees aren't capped. So the interest rate may be capped, but fees aren't. So it is true from a national perspective. There's been talk about trying to legislate, rein in payday lending, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
and that's because there's a market for,
think about it. It's a multi-billion-dollar market. So obviously there's some need being unmet in the marketplace, obviously. And you'd be very surprised who falls prey to payday lending. In fact, there's been an uptick. Payday lending is not just an urban thing, if you will. Payday lending, a significant uptick in rural areas during the recession. And in fact, in West County, it's not surprising to see former fast food restaurants that are now payday lending operations, which to me is a tangible, symbolic gesture to the instant gratification. Usually, I mean, you can't truly drive in and get a check, but it essentially is communicating that.
That's great. So one last question. So before we finish, when Jason talked about some big things, big dollar amounts, large thing, could mean hundreds of jobs and lots of happy investors and everything, we know that serial entrepreneurs are what we want, serial investors. So we want people to be able to invest in something, have it get several multiples, and then they want to be able to get out and then reinvest it in it. Because this idea of that success begets success.
Sure.
Is that true in what you're talking about, or is this really just a way to onboard people into debt and equity financing for other things?
I want to say this, and that is it's not a linear path. And we've seen several different manifestations. I will tell you this much. We've all heard about, people building computers in their garages, right, and then turning into multi-conglomerate, what have you. Well, that starts possibly with a microloan. And we're talking about really small financing. And so be it tech or be it retail, I think there can be large things to be had and gained regionally and even nationally from this idea of microfinance opening up the door to financing opportunities.
Great. Well, once again, thank you very much, Galen. Let's give him a hand. When we come back in just a couple minutes here, Eric Garland is going to join us, and Eric is going to share with us, a little bit more about why this matters to all of us, and kind of hopefully, give us a little bit of a cautionary tale, but also give us something optimistic to look at. Thank you very much. We'll be right back.